Just as I am, though tossed about with many a conflict, many a doubt, fightings and fears within, without, O Lamb of God, I come, just as I am, thou wilt receive, wilt welcome, pardon, cleanse, relieve, because thy promise I believe, O Lamb of God, I come, I come.
Good morning. Good to see everybody this morning on a beautiful sunshiny morning, but yet we have some nice cold crisp weather. Hope that you're enjoying it. If you would open your Bibles to John chapter 11. John chapter 11. We're going to begin reading again about the life of Christ that we're studying this quarter and this year. And we're beginning to get toward the end of Jesus' life. And it made me think of something. When you think of the term single-minded, grit, determination, focus, who do you think of? Milt? That's a pretty good one, especially when it comes to his bridge game. Who else? Who comes to mind when you think of grit, determination, single-minded focus? I'm sorry? Paul, the Apostle Paul. Absolutely. If you've ever watched a cat focused on getting a bird, that's the kind of focus that I'm talking about, where it's 100% of your mind, body, everything is just focused on one thing. One of the people that we read about a lot is Tom Brady, the quarterback. A lot of people just say how focused he is and on his career, and unfortunately in the news a lot lately, it's been, has his focus on his career cost him in other areas of his life? Can single-minded focus, that kind of determination, cost us in other areas of our lives? It can, can't it? What are ways that, do we know of people that are focused on their career, for example, if their focus is on the career ladder, obtaining the highest position that they can, earning the most money that they can, what are some things that give way to that kind of single-minded focus?
Their families. They can lose their families.
Okay, their families. It can cost them their families. What else? What else could they give up with that kind of focus? I'm sorry? They could give up their salvation. Everything else goes to the side. As far as their spiritual life, their fulfillment is found in their position, their job, their acquisition of more and more prestige. What else could they give up? Their health? Have you seen people that are so focused on obtaining their working their job that they forget about their health, or their health goes to the wayside? Sometimes there is that negative focus that's single-minded, but is there a positive side of single-minded focus? What's the positive side of single-minded focus? You get things done. Absolutely. What else? What are some other positives of single-minded determination and focus?
Bringing others to Christ.
Okay. Bringing others to Christ. Absolutely. Well, that's exactly what we're going to see here is, as we get into this last week of Jesus' life, that Jesus has this kind of single-minded focus. When he determined that he was going to Jerusalem, what did his disciples tell him?
Don't go.
Don't go. Why? Why didn't they want him to go? They're going to kill you. You're a wanted man. You're on every wanted poster in every Jewish post office in Jerusalem. Why would you want to go there? You're only going to be put to death. The scribes and the Pharisees and the chief priests had sent out the word that they were trying to arrest Jesus. And yet the Bible records that he set his face toward Jerusalem. Is that single-minded focus? Is that determination? Now, in Jesus' determination, I was watching some football yesterday, believe it or not, and saw one of the fans up in the stands. Do y'all remember those foam fingers that have the number 1 on it? What's the chant with when you're holding up that finger? We're number 1, right? We're the best, or I'm number 1, or you see a player make a good shot in basketball, and he goes out, and he's running down the court just wagging his finger like that. What's he saying? I'm number 1. Right. But when I thought about Jesus and his single-minded determination for this week that's coming up, the number 1 kept coming back to mind. That Jesus was focused on the number 1. And what number 1 was that? The Father. I have not come to do my will, but of the one who sent me. Jesus was focused on the will of his Father. And we're going to find out a little bit later in this week in John chapter 17 when we read that Jesus prays to the Father, and he prays that his people may be one, as you and I are one. Jesus has single-minded focus this week because his focus is on one. That if he and the Father are one, then what does he want his people to be? One with each other and one with him, and therefore one in the Father. Now, does this single-minded focus that Jesus have come with a cost? Absolutely. What kind of cost do you think Jesus occurred over his lifetime with this single-minded drive and focus?
He gave up his physical family.
Okay, he gave up his physical family, and sometimes they didn't understand him at all, did they?
Any kind of security that he might have had.
Okay, any kind of security that he might have had. Doesn't the scripture record that the Son of Man does not have a place to lay his head? He gave up a home, a family, a normal family life, what we would call it, a wife and kids, and a nice little house in Jerusalem suburbs. He gave up those things for what purpose? To seek and save the lost. For one purpose. To seek and save the lost. And thereby doing the will of his Father. And so we're coming into this week. Jesus is headed with his disciples to Jerusalem against their objections. They know that he's a wanted man. Jesus knows he's a wanted man. He knows what's coming. And so he is headed, this is following the resurrection of Lazarus, and he is heading into Bethany. And we're going to let's begin reading in John chapter 12. Beginning with verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus therefore came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave him a dinner for him there. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table. Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, he who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this anointment not sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor?" He said this, not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. Having kept charge of the money bag, he used to keep for himself what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone, so that she may keep it for the day of my burial. For the poor always you have with you, but you do not always have me." So this is 6 days before the Passover, and Jesus is coming to the town of Bethany, where Lazarus was, that Jesus had raised from the dead. Now, all of the Gospels record this story, but there are some subtle variations between the story. In John, it doesn't really give the location, but in Luke and some of the other Gospels, it says it was at the house of who? It's recorded to be at the house of Simon the leper. We don't know who Simon the leper was. Or is this a leper that Jesus healed? Is this a leper that was outside the city and they were just using his home? We don't really read anything in the four gospel stories of this occasion about Simon, other than this occasion was taking at his house. It says that Martha was serving, and it says there they offered him a dinner. Who do you think they are? It says they offered him a dinner. Okay, quite easily could be Martha, Mary, and Lazarus. It's also possible that this was a town celebration. We have a pretty good idea that the town loved Lazarus and his family, correct? If we go back to John chapter 11, at Lazarus' death, it says there were many mourners. There were many people that were mourning with him. So it could be that the town is putting this on, and Mary and Martha, especially Martha, was serving. We don't really know anything about Simon, what his role is. Some scholars have guessed, and this is all it is a guess, that Simon could have been Mary and Martha and Lazarus' father. Some others just estimate that he was a prominent member of the community, someone that Jesus perhaps had healed that is not recorded, because we know that the Bible records that there were many other miracles and signs that Jesus did that are not recorded in this book, but these are recorded that what? That you might believe. So it's very possible that Jesus could have healed this Simon the leper. We don't know. We don't know what role he plays in this story, but it's at his home that this feast is taking place. Martha is serving, and Lazarus was one of those that were reclining with him at the table. They're honoring Jesus for what he had done for Lazarus. The occasion comes up. It says, well, first of all, let me ask, what's the best gift you have ever given? A lot of times it's easy for us to say, what's the best gift I've ever received? We can all think of something that we've gotten that was really special to us. But what's the best gift you ever gave? Well, I see a lot of wives looking at their husbands. It better be that engagement ring.
I think more important than that is love.
Love, okay.
I think it's the giving of yourself and your time is the most valuable, and it's probably that which I think of as the most valuable.
Okay.
Money I have none to give. It's not that I have none, but none to speak of.
Yeah, that's in the Bible. Isn't it? Silver and gold have I none, but what I have I give to you. She's saying that our time, our presence, is sometimes the best gift that we have to give. I remember years ago when I was first starting out, I'd gotten out of college and started a new job, and like many young couples starting out, we didn't have any money, and Christmas time came around, and the car had broken down and had a bunch of expenses. Didn't have a lot of money at Christmas time for gifts. So what we decided to do is I made a gift for everybody in our family. And I thought about it, and I chose something for each person, and I had a workshop of tools that my dad would let me have access to. And so I made all of these gifts for my family. They have told me over the years that was one of the most special gifts that they received, because each one of them I had put a lot of thought into. And obviously in the creating and making and staining and all of the work that goes into that, they could tell that I'd put a lot of effort into it. I look back at that as one of the best gifts I've ever given because of the thought. I was able to think about it. Today, what is the most popular gift given? Gift card. Why is a gift card one of the most popular gifts given? You don't have to think about it. There's nothing to put into it. And sometimes it's not even a gift card. What do? We just, we'll see how hip you are and current you are. Anybody know about Venmo or Zelle? You can just put it right into them where they can have access to the money right away. You don't even have to make the effort to put it in the mail, right? And so gifts over time have become more and more thoughtless because it's harder and harder to come up with something that is a special gift. What we're going to read about here is a gift that Mary gave the Lord. And we're going to see how Mary's concept of giving and how this can apply to us. It says, Mary therefore took a pound of expensive ointment made from pure nard and anointed at the feet of Jesus and wiped his feet with her hair. First of all, let's talk about the anointing. What was a Jewish custom when you had somebody come over to your house? To have their feet washed. And when did that cleansing take place? When they came into the house, right. From what we know about this, it says Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those reclining with him at the table, right? So Jesus was already reclining at the table. So this is not the cleansing of the feet that would normally take place. This is something different. This is something special. This is also not, many of you may remember we've already studied about when it says a sinful woman came in and anointed his feet with oil and wiped his feet with her tears. Do you remember that story? This is not the same occasion, not the same woman. This is later in his ministry than that occasion. So this is Mary, the sister of Lazarus. And it says she took a vial or jar. Some translations say alabaster jar. What was alabaster? A stone? Okay. From what I understand, it's a type of marble. Very, very precious, very beautiful. You can have statues and figurines made out of alabaster that are, in some cases, priceless. But very, very expensive material. And this jar was single use, right? Because it says she broke it open in some of the other accounts in the New Testament. So she broke this jar, which was very expensive in itself, of pure nard. Nard was a very expensive perfume, and it was common in high society in the Jewish culture that when someone came into your home, you washed their feet, but you would also put some perfume on their head. Why do you think they would do that? Why would they put perfume on people that came into their home? Make them smell better. What was the mode of transportation back then? They walked everywhere, right? What do you think of the general climate in Israel at that time, or even now? Pretty hot. And most homes didn't have their central heat and air conditioning the way we do now. So they were pretty hot, smelly. So in high society, very common to anoint their head with perfume. We don't know what Lazarus and Mary and Martha's situation were. We don't know if they were wealthy or not. But I like to think about this. She took something that was very expensive. What does Judas say it's worth? When we read the account of what Judas' response was, what does he say it's worth? 300 denarii. A 300 denarii would be equivalent to about 1 year's wages for the average person. So this was a lot of money in this one. This was Chanel number 5. I guess if you were to compare that today, it was an expensive perfume. Now, a lot of people in those days would buy this as investments. You know, much today that we may buy gold or silver and wait for it to appreciate in value and resell it. This could have been an investment for them. But and I'm going to say this is my speculation. No, there's no scriptural reference to this, but I do find in historical accounts that a lot of times women had things like this as their dowry. We don't ever read in the biblical accounts about Mary, Lazarus, and Lazarus' parents, do we? It's very possible that they could have been deceased at this point, and Mary had her dowry waiting for her wedding. There's no scriptural basis to say this definitely was her dowry, but I like to think of an application that if she is giving her dowry to Jesus, spiritually speaking. What would that mean? She's giving herself to Jesus. What is the church supposed to be? The bride of Christ. So doesn't that make for a neat analogy here? That Mary is giving her dowry to Jesus as a symbol of giving her everlasting devoted love to her master, to Jesus. And so Mary takes this expensive oil, she breaks it, she opens it. She gave something extravagant. She gave something because he asked her to, right? No? Well, it was expected, right? I mean, wasn't she expected to do that? No. You think she did it because of everybody that was watching? How do we know that that's true?
He says in verse 7 that she had intended to save that for his burial as a gift
Right.
to help them.
Right.
So this came early.
This came early. It came as a gift. For a woman to go in where the men were reclining, eating dinner, was not allowed in Jewish custom. So this was a serious breach of protocol for her to be even going in there where they were. And for her to do this, again, in mealtime, not a normal part of protocol. So she was violating protocol even by doing this. So this shows that not only did she give an extravagant gift, she gave the gift freely, she gave the gift unashamedly. She wasn't concerned about who was watching, what they would think. We get the idea that she didn't look around to see everybody thinking everybody's going to be pretty impressed by what I'm giving, right? How do we get that idea? She started at his feet. To wash the feet was the position of the lowliest servant in the household. And so for Mary to begin washing Jesus at his feet, to anoint his feet with the perfume, showed that she was humbling herself to the lowest position on the social totem pole. That she was not only giving Jesus a extravagant gift, a gift freely, but she was humbling herself, and she was unashamed at humbling herself. And another breach of protocol, it says that she wiped the ointment away with her hair. For a Jewish woman to take her hair down in front of other men, again, a serious breach of protocol. This shows that Mary had, kind of like Jesus, what? Single-minded focus. Who is her focus on? Jesus. Her focus was on worshiping him, on honoring him, on showing him her love and dedication to him. And it made me think, what are we supposed to do when we come in here and in just a few minutes? When we get up, they get up and start singing, what are we supposed to be doing? We're supposed to be focused on Jesus, on God, and by doing what? Worshiping. And worship is our sacrifice of praise, right? So when we worship, we're offering a gift to God. And we should be offering our gift, wouldn't you think, in the same manner as Mary? That we should offer our gift extravagantly? What do you think extravagant worship looks like? What does extravagant worship look like? I'm sorry? Happy worship. We should worship with joy, and we should worship as a celebration. Isn't our worship a celebration of what Jesus has done? Our extravagant worship should reflect the gift that he has given us. She was honoring Jesus for the gift that he had given her. by giving her, Jesus, the best gift that she had. When we come into worship, we should be giving Jesus the best gift that we have in extravagant worship. What about unashamed? When we come into worship, should we be unashamed when we worship? I think about that, and I think about the single-minded focus, and that Jesus was focused on going to Jerusalem. Mary was focused on Jesus. What happens when we're not focused? What happened to Peter when he took his focus off of Jesus? When he got outside the boat, he began to sink, right? When he started looking at the water and the waves and listening to the wind and getting all these other distractions to the side, he began to sink. But what happened when he looked forward? He walked on water. He did something miraculous. When we come to worship, where should our focus be? Our focus should be straight on Jesus. But what if I'm worried about what you're doing over in your pew? What if I'm worried about, why does Paula have her cell phone out? What's she doing? She playing a game. Or I look over there and I see Mark, and is he sleeping? Is his eyes closed? Or I look over at somebody else and say, I can't believe they came to church dressed like that. I want to tell you a story about when I was younger. My dad was an elder at College Hill. I grew up, and I worked as a teenager. I cleaned the building. And so one of my jobs after the morning service was to pick up all the cards. They just left them in the pew at the time, and I picked them all up, and I would give them to my dad. And I took him one. I couldn't believe it. A person had wrote on there, and this is back in the day. I won't tell you what day, but back in the day, when guys like to wear their hair a little bit longer. And this woman had written on this card, there was a boy serving communion that had hair over his collar. I was so distracted, I could not worship. What will we allow to take our eyes off of Jesus? If we spend all of our time in worship looking at everybody else and criticizing how they worship, or if they're worshiping, or how they're dressed, or how they look, what does that affect to our relationship to Jesus? It interferes. Let me make one confession. I am a auditory person. I learn auditorially. Visual stimulus distracts me. And so sometimes I can be looking away and I can hear everything you're saying, but I can be looking at something else. And this is a habit that annoys people tremendously. That when I'm having a conversation with, like I might be talking to Milt, and Milt be talking to me, and I'm looking over there at Mark, and I can hear everything that Milt's saying. But what's more likely to happen when I take my focus off of Milt? I'm going to start thinking about what Mark's wearing, or what Frankie's doing with that piece of paper. I'm more likely to take my mind off of Milt. And so when we bring our gift of worship and praise, my question today is, how focused are we on our worship? How focused are we on Jesus? What kind of gift are we bringing him in our worship? Yes.
I'd like to open the aperture just a little bit.
Okay.
I believe presenting our bodies a living and holy sacrifice is worship. The way we live our lives is also worship, and I would open the aperture to say we have the same mindset as we walk our daily lives, not just in the building.
Absolutely. Thank you for expanding that. That this same gift, present our bodies as a living sacrifice, should be done on a daily basis, not just in worship. Absolutely. One last point I want to make about Mary, and then we're going to move on, is Mary spent a lot of time at Jesus' feet. Do you think? Where was, when we first hear of Mary, where was Mary? She was sitting at his feet as he was teaching. And Mary was doing what? Martha was doing what? Serving. That's kind of a repetitive story, isn't it? Martha's serving again in this story today. Mary is at the feet of Jesus. So when we first meet Mary, she's learning at the feet of Jesus. Then we read in John chapter 11, verse 32, that she is surrendering at Jesus' feet. When Lazarus was being raised from the dead, it says that Jesus came, Mary fell at his feet and said, Jesus, if you had only been here. She's falling at Jesus' feet. She's surrendering to Jesus. And now we find that she's at Jesus' feet again, honoring Jesus. So one of the additional things that we can learn from Mary is that sometimes we need to spend more time at Jesus' feet. We need to learn before we can learn to surrender, right? We need to surrender before we can honor. And so from the life of Mary, we learn about the special gift. Now let's move on to Judas. Judas's concern was what? Money. And the Bible says that he wasn't concerned about the gift to the widows and the orphans or the other contribution. What was his true concern? What was his focus?
Well, he was a thief. He was taking the money out of the collection.
Okay.
For their support. And so his focus was on himself.
Okay. His focus was on himself. He was stealing from the treasury. He was in charge of the treasury. And he was infuriated that Mary had done this. Can you not see this in your mind's eye about Mary's breaking this alabaster oil? And he's looking about, what is he thinking? You cost me 300 denarii. I can see him almost just bursting. Why wasn't this sold? I can't believe what you're doing. What happens when we are self-possessed? That's going to come out, isn't it? It's going to show itself. Judas had effectively kept himself hidden for some time. Now, do you think he was hidden from Jesus all this time? No. Jesus knew his heart from the very beginning. But if we try to, and perhaps Judas even fooled himself. Is it possible that he convinced himself, well, I'm only doing this, and it's not as bad as, but as long as I stay among, I'm okay. As long as I stay near Jesus, I'm okay. I've just got this one little thing. Whatever Judas's reasons, we know that this just was the tipping point. Because what he decided to do is the very next day, what did he do? He went out and betrayed Jesus. He said, well, I lost 300, but I'm going to get something. I'm going to get something out of this. And perhaps, Jesus foretelling that he's about to die, perhaps Judas thought, my money-making opportunity is about to end. I need to cash in for everything I can get. But for whatever reason, we know this so incensed Judas that the very next day he went out and betrayed Jesus for his amount. Let's move on. There are a few more things about that I want to share, but I want to get into the triumphal entry, what we call the triumphal entry. Next, we read down in verse 28 of chapter 12. And when he had said these things, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. When he drew near to Bethpage and Bethany, at the mount that is called Olivet, he sent two of the disciples, saying, "Go into the village in front of you, where on entering you will find a colt tied, on which no one has ever sat. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' you shall say, 'The Lord has need of it.'" So Jesus is coming up to Jerusalem. He's sending some disciples ahead. What is he showing them when he says, "Go into town, you're going to find a colt and a donkey. I want you to bring them. Someone may approach you. This is what you say." What is Jesus showing them by this announcement? He knows all things. Jesus knows nothing in what's going to happen is a surprise to him. He is showing by his knowledge his authority. And by his authority and knowledge, he is showing that no one is taking me. I am giving myself. And they call this the triumphal entry. And real quickly, we'll go through this. How did a king normally enter a city? A lot of fanfare. I mean, we've seen Cleopatra, right? And Ben-Hur and Alexander the Great and these epic movies where they show these vast armies. I mean, have you looked at some of these parades in Red Square in Moscow, or the parades they have in North Vietnam, where it's all about the military, right? And it's all about conquest. Well, back then, when they would go into a city, they would have singers out in front of them. And what did the people sing? What happened when David had won a battle? When the singers went into the city, what were they singing? Saul has slain his thousands. David has slain his tens of thousands. So they're proclaiming the might and the conquering ability of this person, and which eventually was to become the king. But that was the practice, is they would come into the city with songs touting the war victories of the king. How did Jesus come in? On a donkey. Did he ride the great white charger or the chariot with 6 horses abreast? Did he come in with the big standards and showing his victories and some of the skulls of the kings he had defeated? He came in with palm branches. He came in with children and women and men singing praises to God, not praises to a military leader. He came in humble. He came in to show a different kind of triumph. He came in to show what it means to be humble, what it means to be dedicated, what it means to give ourselves to God. And I want to submit to you that Jesus' triumphal entry was this series of triumphs. Jesus' entry into the Jerusalem showed the triumph of humility over pride, the triumph of grace over law, the triumph over supposed weakness over supposed strength, the triumph of reality of religion versus the image of religion, and the triumph of sacrifice over self. Thank you.